Hey, this is Jeff, and welcome back to the no-kill run of the Pit. Last week, Luz gathered as much intel as she could to prepare for the meeting with Ashur, and tied up a few loose ends in case things go sideways and she needs to leave town in a hurry. So let's go see what he wants. I mean, it's ostensibly to congratulate her on becoming arena champion, but she has a feeling that's not all there is to it.
Lord Ashur will be right with you. Feel free to wait inside, champion.
And I'm telling you,
Typical big shot, making us wait for a meeting to show off how important he is.
Order and dispense a little justice.
And I suppose you'll follow that up by raising the dead.
No, but I may heal the infirm later in the week. Time permitting, of course.
Sir, we've had sightings of Wernher back in the city, and there's been an increase in chatter between slaves.
Workers.
What?
We call them workers. Helps with morale. Reminds them that they might earn their freedom someday.
Whatever we call them, they've been gathering makeshift weapons.
All right. Put your guards on alert. Tell them to be on the lookout for anyone loitering too long downtown. And keep a watch on Medea at all times. Anything big happens, it's bound to go through her. Now, I've got a very important meeting with our new friend. So if anything big comes up, you use the intercom.
Yes, sir.
Okay, break's over.
And now he should force greet us. Maybe.
Well, if it isn't our fearless champion.
Hello?
Nice work in the hole, new blood. Knew you couldn't be one of our normal workers. So that begs the question, who are you? And what are you doing in my city?
The whole point is we're supposed to infiltrate his organization so we can steal the cure. I heard the Pit was building an army. I'm here to join. Preferably something in public relations or maybe R&D?
You heard right. And after a show like that, how could I refuse someone of your talents? While the rest of the world scrambles to survive, we have an army, industry, and thanks to a recent surprise, we've got no need to fear radiation. But we do have a few loose ends that still need tied up. Tell me, do you know a man named Wernher?
Wait, can you tell me more about what you're doing in the Pit?
Ever since the city was scourged, we've done what everyone does. Whatever's necessary to survive. I know my city seems barbaric to you, but it's the only way we can carve out a home in this hellhole, and it's kept these people alive. But that's enough stalling for time. So do you know Wernher?
Probably better to tell the truth now, so he'll trust us more if we need to tell a more important lie later. Yes, I do. He's the one who brought me here. Under false pretenses, I might add.
I appreciate your honesty. It's a rare virtue in this age. Wernher was my lieutenant until he betrayed me and escaped justice. And if I know him, he brought you here to steal something very dear to the city. Do you intend to follow through with his plan? Feel free to be honest. Please, don't be intimidated by the turret behind you.
Didn't take long for the other shoe to drop on that more important lie thing. He made me an offer, but now that I know the score, I'm joining your side.
A wise decision, new blood. A very wise decision. It looks like Wernher underestimated you, and he certainly didn't appreciate what I'd do to anyone that threatened our little discovery. Now I think would be a good time for you to meet the cure for yourself. Let's take a trip back to the lab, where Sandra can explain.
Lord Ashur,
Don't let
the
me keep
slaves are
you.
rioting, and someone's
Don't
armed
let
them.
me keep
We
you.
need you out here, and fast.
Don't let... Damn it, I'm on my way. Just head back and talk to Sandra. She'll explain all about the cure. Then you'll see why you have to put an end to Wernher.
There are also some audio journals in Ashur's bedroom that he made for his daughter Marie in case something happens to him before she's old enough to understand. I'm not going to listen to them, so I'll just summarize. He talks about the Scourge, uniting the Raiders after he was left for dead, using his Brotherhood knowledge to restart the mill, and ultimately resorting to raiding other settlements for forced labor because the contamination kills or mutates most of the children born here. The logs are in this safe. He has a lot of regrets, but like he said, he believes what he's doing is necessary for the people of the pit to survive. A lot of which we knew already, but he also talks about eventually discovering the cure with his wife Sandra. He's kind of vague, but apparently it has something to do with Marie. I've talked a good bit about whether things NPCs tell you should be considered canon, because they might not know the real truth or be willing to share it. But given the context, I think it's fairly safe to assume he's being honest in the tapes. Anyway, Sandra's lab is down at the other end, so let's talk to her.
Oh, Ashur told me you might be coming here, but I'm afraid I was preoccupied. Little Marie here is an angel, but she can still be a handful. I'm Sandra. Ashur set me up here to work on the pit's medical research, and Marie here is our daughter. Our little miracle, really.
Pardon me, but Lord Ashur said you could show me some sort of cure?
Oh, I hate it when he calls her that. I swear it's a terrible thing to call his own daughter.
And with a science check. Wait, you mean she has a natural and transferable immunity of some sort?
Well, this is a nice surprise. Apparently you and Ashur are the only other people who know anything about science in this place. Yes, it seems that our daughter was born with a naturally acquired immunity to any form of mutation. It's nothing short of a miracle, honestly. I'm still trying to figure out why, but she may just hold the key to stopping the pit's trog problem. Hell, maybe other types of mutations too.
Aren't you worried about hurting Marie?
Oh no, these tests are perfectly safe. In fact, between the crib and her uncanny health, she's probably the safest child in the world. Ashur and I would never risk her health. And if that means it takes longer to develop a full cure, then, well, everyone else can wait.
If taking Marie right in front of Sandra sounds like a very bad idea, your intuition is correct. If there's anything I can do to help, just let me know.
You're a dear, but things are well in hand here. If you really want to help, you should probably go deal with whatever had Ashur rushing off in such a hurry. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to take care of one last test before Marie's nap time.
This terminal basically just confirms things we've already learned or pieced together, albeit in more concise and scientific phrasing, as you might expect from Sandra. I think it's mainly here so you know what you're supposed to do if you rock up all guns blazing and kill everybody before they have a chance to explain what's going on. So the question at this point is, does any of that really change anything? To be sure, Luz has never trusted Wernher, but if she's annoyed with anyone for throwing her under the bus, it's Medea. She's sufficiently self-aware to understand that getting captured at the gate wasn't really Wernher's fault, just her overconfidence in the stealth suit. Which was purely role-playing at the time, but thanks to the comments for pointing out Gruber probably spotted me so fast when I was sneaking because I had my Pip-Boy light on, which I've got out of the habit of checking because of the stealth suit. So, a little bit of life-imitating art there. Anyway, learning that Wernher used to be Ashur's right-hand man does make her trust him even less. And the slavers aren't quite the psychotic nihilists he made them out to be either, but here's the thing. They're still slavers. And even though it's mentioned that bosses who abuse the slaves for no good reason are punished by death, they have a pretty broad definition of good reason. We've seen them beating slaves for not working hard enough and killing them for trying to escape, so it's obvious the more sadistic bosses can still indulge themselves as long as they have an excuse, or it flies under Ashur's radar. And Ashur probably turns a blind eye to a lot. Even if you take his tapes at face value and assume his speech in the square wasn't just propaganda, we found out last week most of his guards were recruited from raider tribes he assimilated, kind of like Kaisar in New Vegas. And he'd almost have to let them get away with some baseline level of mayhem just to keep them loyal, whether he likes it or not. And even if he could somehow manage to completely stamp out the physical abuse, they're still slavers. And here we have Marie, Ashur and Sandra's daughter, and also the key to finding the cure. Click on her. Baby Marie is napping peacefully in her crib, safely connected to various medical monitors and wrapped in protective swaddling. It looks like moving her would not go over well with her family. You think? But bottom line, Luz is starting to see some shades of gray, but she's definitely still on Team Wernher at this point. So... yoink!
You think you can get away with this? Every raider in this town will be after your head to bring her back.
Yeah, kind of figured that.
She's got my baby! Take her down, but be careful.
Despite what she says, if they detect you, they don't seem particularly careful. They will just shoot you. Although, to be fair, even if they take down like 90% of your health bar, the game doesn't replace baby in your inventory with injured baby or dead baby, so I guess they are pretty careful. Yeah, this is why I had it in my mind the last few weeks that these back streets are dangerous. Because now they are. And this is totally the long way around because we have to go through the steel mill, but even though going up and over past the shooting range brings you out basically right next door to Medea's house, the catwalks are pretty narrow, and I don't want to risk having some frantic raider run into us where there's no room to dodge. There we go. Might get shot in the back a little if we get between him and his target, but at least he didn't bump into us. I'm not sure if Hammer got Marco, but either way, it looks like he's about to get swarmed. Is that?
You kicked the hornet's nest now, didn't you? I was lucky to get away even for a second. But more importantly, I hear you've stolen the cure. Mind if I see it?
Yeah, convenient. Did you know the cure is actually a baby?
Of course I knew, but you don't see me blubbering about it. That baby is our only chance of a cure and freedom from this hellhole. But if it makes you feel better, when we're done, she'll be back with her parents and never needs to know any of this happened. So quit whining.
As long as the kid's all right. Take her.
She'll be all right, just not with me. Ashur's guards are always watching me. They'd find her right away. Wernher sent me word that he's hiding out in the steel yard. He's got everything there to take care of the cure. Take it to him and he'll handle the rest. Now get going.
Oh, this just gets better and better. Let's read the note she just gave us. M. Secured a site for the bundle. Have it sent to the shack below the blast furnace in the steel yard. Door will be cleared when the fighting starts and marked with a bright blue light to keep out the Trogs, which is a new plot point. Trogs avoid bright light. Ashur and his family will get what's coming to them. W. Which seems a little bit at odds with Medea's claim that she'll return Marie to her parents after they do their own research on the cure. In fact, both factions say the most important thing is the cure, but we have conclusive proof that's not true. We know 4 people who won their freedom in the arena and joined Ashur's army, and Duke implies the number might be higher, but it's definitely not a majority, and nobody mentions Wernher being one of them. Now, admittedly, if he was, the other slavers probably wouldn't mention it because he's a traitor, but it seems like the slaves would think it's a pretty big deal that he won his freedom and then came back to help. Which means he was probably recruited by Ashur as a child or a young adult right after the Scourge. Ashur was Brotherhood, and they prefer to start training their initiates pretty young when their minds are more malleable and they don't have as many bad habits to unlearn. Maybe he was part of a raider gang, maybe not, or maybe he really is a former arena champion and nobody talks about it. But whatever the case, the likelihood that he's a qualified geneticist approaches 0 to within more decimal places than I can measure. Now, if you give him the baby, he'll eventually hand it off to Medea, but I'm not sure that's any better. On one hand, when we woke up after being beaten unconscious at the front gate, we were at full health. That's not how concussions or traumatic head injuries work, so it might imply Medea applied some first aid. On the other hand, it is how they work in most movies and video games, so it might not mean anything. Especially since, if you return to the pit later, she admits she's not making any progress on a cure, and it really doesn't even sound like she's trying. And the canon status of this is debatable because it's a stat the player can only see in-game with console commands, but Medea's medicine skill is 11. Bottom line, they'd have to be completely delusional to think they have a better chance of finding a cure than Sandra. Ergo, the cure is clearly not the most important thing to them. If we had taken a different path through Medea's dialogue, she basically admits she really just wants Marie as a hostage. Which if you're fighting for your freedom, fair enough, but it still means they lied to us to get our help. So it is possible to finish the quest for either faction without killing anything. If you side with Ashur, find Wernher, and pass a hard speech check, you can just convince him to leave town and never come back, and that's it, quest complete. But while siding with Wernher doesn't technically require you to kill anyone either, insofar as your Pip-Boy kill count doesn't increase, you still end up with a lot of blood on your hands, and we'll see why in just a minute. Here he comes.
Ah, you finally made it. I've got everything ready and there are plenty of tests to run, so hurry up and put the brat in the crib.
How did you see me? I'm invisible. Anyway, she's here, but you never told me this meant kidnapping.
Yeah, because you would have just whined about it. If you aren't getting your hands dirty, you aren't making a difference. Welcome to the world. What's important is that the kid is here now, and we can move on to the last part of the plan. That's just a simple matter of letting the Trogs overrun Haven and take care of the bosses for us.
You wouldn't happen to know a guy named Roy Phillips, would you? Because he also wanted me to unleash a bunch of monsters to kill some people we didn't like, and I didn't do that either. I'm a thief, not a murderer.
Oh, sure. He'll just march back to Ashur and his venomous little wifey and say, "Sorry, I stole your firstborn. My mistake." You're in it this far. It's easier to follow through than it is to back out.
He'd forgive me if I put an end to your scheme, and I intend to.
You cowardly little shit. You're afraid to get your hands dirty, so you'll go crawling back to Ashur for forgiveness? And after all this work, you're gonna turn around and betray me? You know, I already have everything I need from you, so you're expendable.
This would be a hard speech check if we didn't have Black Widow, but we do, and mercifully it doesn't require flirting with him. Wernher, how about saving us both a lot of trouble and leaving quietly?
Oh, I see how it is. You signed on with Ashur, and now you're gonna stand by your man. Maybe trying to catch his eye and be his queen? Well, good luck with that, starfucker. I'm sure the two of you will kill each other eventually, even without my help. You, him, and this whole town can burn for all I care. I'm gone.
And there he goes. If we'd agreed to do things his way, he would have given us more details and a key to the pit underground. We'd have to go down there and use a switch that kills the lights around Haven, which allows the Trogs lurking nearby to swarm the place. That's why I wanted to show you the abandoned apartments and the Skyrim door where you come out of the underground last week. The game rather politely gives you a spare key on the table here in case you get rid of them but still want to loot the place, although I'm pretty sure the switch to kill the lights and open the hatch on the other end is permanently disabled now. I'll go down and show you as much as I can, but the exit in Haven will probably be a dead end and we'll have to backtrack. Plus, it's full of trogs and traps and there's not much to loot, so if we come to a part that looks too tricky to move forward without getting spotted, I'm gonna bail. Apparently he didn't make it very far. I'm not sure where he goes if you follow him. Looks like he got distracted by some trogs. Well, he's still in combat alert status, and I don't feel like waiting for him to clear out the whole steel yard or die trying. Anyway, the entrance to this end of the underground is in the extreme northwest corner of the steel yard. And while Luce wasn't down with releasing the trogs, like I said, doing it doesn't bump up people killed on the Pip-Boy. I thought about adding an optional accountability feature so it would, but sometimes that's easier said than done. Like, the Vault 87 Sonic Flush was doable, but convincing Eden to self-destruct wasn't. And unfortunately, this is one of the times when it isn't. I'll go into more detail when I get into the technical stuff at the end, but the bottom line is, there's no way to get an exact count of the people who die because the player pushes the button. I was fine with using an estimate for firing the death ray at Earth in Mothership Zeta because the numbers are so huge, everything you've killed up to that point is reduced to rounding error. But in a situation where the player could actually walk around and count the dead, I'd be a lot less comfortable just guessing. Is there a hole up there? No, but there are skeletons impaled on the stalactites. I guess the giblets dripped off of those, but that begs the question, how did the skeletons get up there? Dunno. I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen any trogs yet. I remembered this place being lousy with them, and farther in it probably is. I think the game is just trying to lull you into a false sense of security with the first part being all quiet like this. Oh yeah, there we go. In the tiny crawl space, of course. That's actually pretty good. Almost an Aliens vibe. Get you overconfident and then throw a bunch at you in the worst possible place. But if they come all the way out into the big room, we might be able to sneak around them. Where's your buddy? There. Yeah, I think we can make that. Piece of cake. Getting back out might be interesting, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I think when this opens up again, there's a room with a nasty trap, which generally aren't a big deal anymore since we have light step, but that only affects floor-based traps like tripwires and mines. We can still set off things like baby carriages and traps that can be triggered by physics interactions, like walking into a grenade bouquet and knocking them loose, so we still need to be careful. Yeah, this is it. There are arrows painted on the floor, and if you follow them, it leads you to a bunch of landmines hidden under some kind of cover, like a crate or a traffic cone or something. I'm not really inclined to find out. Big pile of jet. I wonder if that implies the pit raiders used to come down here. We're probably not that far from the room with the mutilated mannequins we saw last week, where we know they go to party. Jet and devious traps feel like their style. I mean, it's definitely not the trogs. Where do we go from here? I'm not going to try to squeeze past those. I think that's a dead end. And that's where we came in. Did I miss a turn somewhere? Maybe get a better look with a little bit of elevation. Oh! Well, that's it. We're out. I just realized Luz is carrying a baby into an insanely dangerous location for basically no reason at all. Speaking of which, balking when you learn Wernher's real plan and persuading him to leave usually locks you into the Ashur ending. If you don't have Black Widow but pass the speech challenge, he says basically the same thing, with a bit more cursing. Overall, he's not nearly as vulgar as Desmond or MacReady, but in expressing his contempt for Ashur, the slaves, and the player, he drops the F-bomb 5 times in one sentence, which I'm sure would make them proud. If you fail, you just have to kill him. However, there have been numerous comments wishing there was a third option, and I definitely agree. I mean, I started off the first episode with a 20-minute tirade about not liking the endgame quest, and I've probably mentioned it a few times since. I wasn't originally planning to do anything about it, mainly because, much like the arena, it seemed like the amount of dialogue and other content like notes and quest objectives that would need to change would amount to a total rewrite of the DLC, which is beyond the scope of the mod. But speaking of quest objectives, our current target is Haven, but the log doesn't say return the baby to Sandra. It says return the baby to her home. And that got me thinking. Yes, if you want to be all pedantic about things like parents' rights, you'd probably say her home is Haven. But since when has Luz been a stickler about inconvenient social norms like theft is bad or children belong with their parents? Wernher's gone, but why don't we take her back to the mastermind of this somewhat dubious plan and call that her new home? I love how the rebels are slaughtering the bosses in the mill and Everett's just back at his desk like, not my problem, man. Also kind of surprising they didn't kill Brand, the snitch. Everett's actually at a special faction that isn't hostile to the slaves, even after the revolt starts, or to the player, no matter which side you take, so you can complete the ingot quest either way. Bone and Hammer are not so lucky. Good, she's back at home.
Go get Wernher. We can't keep the guards occupied forever, you know.
He's gone. Here's the baby. I guess you're the leader of the rebellion now.
How am I supposed to take care of a kid while organizing the city?
Well, I guess I could take her back to Sandra if that's what you really want. I've had enough of being used and lied to. I'm out of here.
Must be so tough for you. Please don't let our suffering delay you.
You get this message for either vanilla ending and this one too. Medical research from the pit has improved your life. Just try not to think of what it may have cost others. And that's it. Quest complete. I realize that might seem a bit underwhelming, but it's not like the vanilla objective of returning Marie to Sandra would be any harder to complete. And there are differences post-quest. Faction relations toward the player flip again. The slaves who turned hostile when you got rid of Wernher go back to being friendly, and Ashur's troops stay hostile. They still have a bunch of named characters who would otherwise be killed by the script that releases the Trogs, and they're a good bit tougher than the generic pit raiders, so they'll probably repel the slave attack in Uptown and retain control there. The slave forces in the mill and downtown should win in those areas, as usual. It all depends on the combat AI, and like anything else in the game that isn't specifically scripted to take place off-screen, nothing happens in either place unless the player is there to see it. If you avoid going back to Uptown, which is a pretty good idea since the aforementioned named characters are now hostile, whether or not Ashur or any particular minion is alive or dead is a case of Schrodinger's tyrant. Plot-wise, a stalemate kind of makes sense, despite the raiders being much tougher and better trained, because A, Ashur wouldn't want to risk a raid while Marie is being held hostage, and B, the slaves now control the main source of weapons and ammo. And while it's consistent with the DLC's no good choices motif, at least it's better than the two vanilla choices of maintain the status quo or make the situation worse. Hey, I just said there was a third option. I didn't say it was a happy ending. Well, I guess if you're a glass-half-full person, it leaves open the possibility that Medea might eventually make good on her plan to ransom Marie back in exchange for freeing the slaves. Or in this scenario, it'd be for official recognition of their free status. Glass half empty, Ashur's army eventually runs out of ammo and Trogs kill everybody. I forgot about this sniper. We'll just make a run for it and get out of range. If you go back later, Marie's crib and the lab equipment show up in Medea's house, just like if you give Marie to Wernher. Anybody who'd talk to you after siding with Wernher still does, and they mostly have the same lines, because it's a lot like the Wernher ending, just without Wernher. So, other than nobody mentioning him, you can still turn in teddy bears to Medea, use the ammo press in the mill, and turn in ingots to Everett if you haven't collected them all already. Oh, this solution is also advantageous if you're doing a kill everything run and using the mod for the accountability features to get full credit because you don't have those pesky Trogs stealing your kills. Anyway, as is probably obvious by now, Luz isn't going to stick around for any of that. The ammo press is irrelevant, she already turned in all 100 ingots, and the reward for teddy bears is meh, and she's definitely not going back uptown, because she clearly wouldn't want to kill Ashur for his unique armor or anything like that. So, all that's left is to schlep our souvenirs back to the capital wasteland. We are so over-encumbered. But I'm not going to make multiple trips back and forth to the pit. We'll just waddle over to the handcart, and there's got to be a container we can use at the other end of the tunnel. A couple trips back and forth to Megaton from there, and we're done. And that's it for the pit. I don't anticipate any major PAM features being necessary for Broken Steel. I'm pretty sure you can do a no-kill run in the vanilla game, so I'll probably get started on that sooner rather than later. I might take a week off just to get caught up on some real-world stuff, but I definitely don't see it being like The Pit, where it was sometimes 2 or 3 weeks between episodes because it involved a lot of tough design decisions and complicated implementation details. Speaking of which, if you bail out when I start talking about technical stuff, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications if you haven't already. And if you have questions or suggestions, let me know in the comments. First up, I fixed the arena announcer. Here's what it was like before. And how it sounds now. Round 1.
And now, my friends, we have for you a group of slaves willing to kill and slaughter in order to become one of we privileged few. They will fight, they will die, and all for you, all for your entertainment. Now, are they ready to die for their chance at freedom? Let's find out. Release the barrels. Fight!
Round 2.
They're savage. They're brutal. They're here to keep this worker in his place. The undefeated Bear Brothers. Let's find out if the newcomer can hold his own against real fighters. Release! Fight!
And round 3.
And now, this slave has proven willing to kill and die for her freedom. But how will she fare against the man who made it all the way? Gruber! Undefeated in the hole, Gruber has yet to meet his match. Only one will walk out with their freedom. Only one will walk out alive. Release the barrels. Go!
The problem was exactly the same as with Ashur's speech. There's an announcer NPC and a loudspeaker that both use the same topic, and the individual lines all have say once set, so they leapfrog each other instead of saying the same line at the same time. Likewise, the fix was exactly the same. I overrode the announcer topics and used a variable to allow each line to be spoken exactly twice and didn't have to touch any of the vanilla triggers or scripts that control the sequence. I could fix the barrels falling too early, but it would require introducing a potential mod conflict. The problem is, the vanilla arena control script has a safety timer that the comments say is in case the announcer doesn't work for some reason, which may be perfectly innocent and legit, or it might have been the people who wrote the master control script taking a passive-aggressive shot at the people implementing the dialogue, because the announcer dialogue was obviously screwed up. But people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, because this script doesn't work right either. And I should say here, I don't mean to sound like I'm on a high horse about this. Yes, it seems like a bug they had to have noticed, but how much you can do when you're under a deadline to release a product, and how much you can do when you've had 15 years to study the code are two different things. So I apologize if I've sounded kind of snarky about the developers there. But like I said, fixing it would introduce a potential conflict with any other mod that changes the arena fight. I'm not aware of any, but that doesn't mean none exist. Let me know in the comments if you think it's worth the risk. Next up, I tweaked a few things in the alternate arena solution, per suggestions from the comments. First, I added 2 Trank-X bottles, one in the Steelyard booth where you find some ingots and Radaway, and one at the first aid station in the supply plant. It doesn't really make it any easier, it just rewards players who like to explore. You know, you stumble across it before the arena is open, and it's like, wonder what that's for. And then when you get the objective to replace Gruber's Rad-X with a sedative, you think, hey, I saw some tranquilizers out in the Steelyard. But the one by Fader's Medical Supplies is still there if you want to avoid the Steelyard and find one by logical deduction. I also added a message that pops up after you reverse pickpocket the tampered Rad-X back onto Gruber, just so the player isn't left hanging. Like, okay, he has it. Is anything else supposed to happen? And it might not even be worth mentioning, but I fixed a potential continuity problem with Gruber's knuckles. As previously noted, they don't work on anybody else because plot-wise he's faking. They don't actually knock him out. But if you talk him into giving them to you and then immediately turn around and hit him with them in the mill, they would. So now they only work on Gruber in the arena. Next, as I said in the gameplay section, I didn't add an accountability feature for releasing the trogs because there's no way to tell how many people they kill. To be more precise, there's no way to do it without creating a potential mod conflict. I could theoretically avoid modifying the trogs or the pit raiders with a script that periodically checks the who killed me flag on the pit raiders, and if it's a trog, bump up the player's kill count. Kinda like what I did with the robots that self-destruct if Desmond kills Calvert, but in reverse. The problem with that is it would have to check every pit raider against every trog, which would be a stupid amount of code, maybe even enough to cause performance issues. Plus, a lot of the pit raiders don't have persistent refs, so the script wouldn't work on them anyway. Finally, the alternate ending for the main quest. I wasn't originally planning to do this. There were some very cool suggestions in the comments about various ways you could resolve the conflict between the factions, but that had the same problem as a true non-violent solution to the arena stage of the quest. The amount of dialogue and other content like notes, message boxes, and quest objectives that would need to change and or be added would basically require a total rewrite of the DLC, which is well beyond the scope of the mod. The biggest problem is dialogue. When you're dealing with characters who use a generic voice type, you have a huge pool of existing dialogue you can repurpose. If you need a new line for Ian West, you can mash up dialogue from Ian plus dozens of other characters. A line from Uncle Roe here, a line from Gary Staley there, whoever. It works because they all have the same voice actor. But the principal characters who would need substantial new dialogue for a significantly different ending to the pit all have unique voice types. Ashur, Sandra, Medea, and so on. Even the secondary characters who do have common voice actors don't have a huge pool of lines, so piecing together new lines to reflect events outside the context of what they can currently talk about just isn't feasible. It probably goes without saying that that decision bugged me because, I'm Belthan. This kind of thing is my bread and butter, especially considering how much time I put into explaining why my only real problem with the pit is that the vanilla choices are nothing changes or make things worse. Especially since people were asking for a third option. And then two things happened. First, while I was designing the alternate arena solutions, I noticed something interesting. The main quest in the vanilla game has a fail stage, and the code that would have set that stage under certain conditions is commented out but still present in the game files. A lot of the message boxes and other resources it would have used are just placeholders, no real content, but they're there too. So at some point, they were obviously considering an ending other than the two we ultimately got, even if it would have been an even worse ending. I'm guessing somebody in an early design meeting was like, look, failing the Nuka-Cola challenge because the player goes psycho and kills Sierra is one thing, but are you sure it's a good idea to let the player fail the main quest in a DLC they just paid an extra $10 for? The point being, that didn't give me any code I could use, but it did lead me to poking around a bit in the quest complete code for the two options that made it to production. The real eureka moment was when I noticed that the objective if you steal the baby but then kill Wernher or persuade him to leave town after he tells you his real plan is return the baby to her home, not return the baby to Sandra. Bingo! Give the baby to Medea, no genocide, no new dialogue required because it's basically the slaves win ending but without Wernher. Mix and match the existing endgame code as required to make sure the faction relations, flags to control NPC dialogue, and stuff like that is all set appropriately. Easy peasy. And once I thought of that, it was like, duh. Short of negotiating a peace or actually curing TDC, this is what I would have wanted to do all along. So I overrode Medea's greeting, conditional on the quest stage being return the baby. That wasn't technically necessary because she still has an open greeting at that point, so I could have made take the baby a top level, but forcing that particular line made the text a bit more streamlined. Instead of needing a couple more lines to set the stage, if she mentions Wernher first, the player can just say he's gone and get down to business. The result script begin for take the baby sets a flag so we can tell the difference between this and the vanilla slaves win ending. The result script end removes the baby from the player and shows the same vanilla message you get if you hand it to Wernher or Sandra. It has 2 choices, both of which do the same thing. They're just there for role-playing purposes, depending on whether or not you feel a bit salty about how she's treated you. The result script sets a couple of vanilla quest variables that are used to control various NPC reactions and such. They're said in Wernher's dialogue when you refuse to hand over the baby, which I didn't change because at that point you can still return the baby to Sandra, just as the game expects, and everyone should react accordingly. But now that you've handed her over to Medea, we need to set them back so everybody recognizes this as a slaves win scenario. And then we set the vanilla quest complete stage, which doesn't reset those 2 variables because they're set by other code according to any one of the numerous other actions that can lock you into one ending or the other. Leaving Haven without the baby, releasing the Trogs, returning the baby to Sandra, whatever. But it conveniently does handle resetting all of the relevant faction relationships, unlocking map markers, doling out XP, and so on. There were a handful of other dialogue overrides to remove any references to Wernher from post-quest dialogue. And Sandra needed a new greeting because when you get the objective to return the baby to her home, Sandra's AI package is to stand at the front door of Haven and force greet you when you get there. And it only changes back to her putter around the lab package after you return Marie. But since Marie is with Medea, and the quest stage condition for her "I see you've come to your senses" line doesn't match, you just get a generic greeting and then a limited selection of top-level topics, and when you finally say goodbye, she may or may not aggro depending on whether the pit raiders in the lobby detect you. Which is hilarious, but not what we want. So I gave her the same line she'd say if you release the Trogs and manage to talk to her before she dies, which is a forced goodbye. The result script makes sure she and Ashur will stay permanently hostile and starts combat. Last but not least, the support script checks for the vanilla main quest to be complete. If you gave Medea the baby, it waits until you leave her house and enables a master ref, which is the enable parent of the crib, lab equipment, milk bottles, and other stuff. Exactly the same way the vanilla game does it if you gave Wernher the baby and went to release the Trogs. And then either way, it stops itself. And I think that's it. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.